Welcome to Future Trends, where we examine the latest stories reshaping tomorrow's international dynamics. This week's headlines: Niger armed forces kill Boko Haram leader, Ukraine stepping up attacks on Russian energy, record UK migrant boat arrivals, and gene editing provides pollen for honeybees. Starting with politics, Kabila faces $24 billion claim in DR Congo treason trial. The charges against the former president include murder, rape and torture linked to his alleged support for Rwanda-backed M23 rebels who control a large part of the region. The eastern provinces of South Kivu, Ituri and North Kivu are demanding an additional $21 billion and the seizure of Kabila's bank assets. Backing for International Criminal Court after sanctions. Nearly 80 countries, including France, Germany and Britain, expressed support for the International Criminal Court after the US authorized expanded economic and travel sanctions on court personnel. The sanctions, aimed at officials involved in investigations concerning US citizens or allies such as Israel, include asset freezes and travel restrictions. China's Xi makes rare visit to Tibet. The Chinese president visited Lhasa for the 60th anniversary of the Tibet Autonomous Region's founding. The visit signals the region's growing strategic weight, given its location along the contested border with India and its role as a critical source of water and energy for China and parts of Asia. UK migrant arrivals on small boats reach new record. A record 28,076 migrants have crossed the Channel to Britain in small boats this year, a 46% rise on the same period in 2024, increasing pressure on Prime Minister Starmer over his handling of immigration. The increase comes amid mounting public concern over immigration, which is polling as the public's top concern, with anti-migrant protests continuing outside hotels housing asylum seekers. Guinea military rulers suspend 3 opposition parties before referendum. The order prevents former President Condé's Rally of the Guinean People, the Union of Democratic Forces of Guinea, led by former Prime Minister Diallo, and the Party of Renewal and Progress from engaging in any political activities for 90 days, which includes the run-up to next month's constitutional referendum. The suspension comes as the West African nations' main parties and civil society groups prepare to hold demonstrations to condemn what they see as a power grab by military leader General Doumbouya. Moving to stories in conflict, record 383 aid workers killed in global hotspots in 2024. The highest numbers of major attacks last year were in the Palestinian territories, with over half or 194 deaths, followed by Sudan, 64, South Sudan, 47, Nigeria, 31, and Congo, 27. As for deaths, Sudan, where civil war is still raging, was second to Gaza and the West Bank, with 60 aid workers losing their lives in 2024. That was more than double the 25 aid worker deaths in 2023. Niger armed forces kill Boko Haram leader. The Nigerian army claims to have killed Bakura, a longtime leader of the Islamist militant group Boko Haram on Shilawa Island. Originally from Nigeria, Mahamadou joined Boko Haram 13 years ago and took over the group after the death of the former leader Abubakar Shekau. West Africa has seen an upsurge in Boko Haram attacks this year, including incursions into military bases, sabotage of roads, and targeting of civilian communities. Israel hits Gaza hospital, killing at least 20, including 5 journalists. Israel struck Nasser hospital in the south of the Gaza Strip, killing at least 20 people, including 5 journalists who worked for Reuters, the Associated Press, and Al Jazeera. Prime Minister Netanyahu's office said Israel deeply regretted what he called a tragic mishap. The Committee to Protect Journalists put the number of journalists and media workers killed since the war began at 197, including 189 Palestinians in Gaza. Meanwhile, the World's Food Crises Authority has confirmed famine is happening in Gaza, based on its metrics, and could spread south to Deir al-Balah and Khan Yunis by the end of next month. US deploys warships off Venezuela in anti-cartel escalation. 3 American destroyers are sailing to Venezuelan waters as President Trump intensifies military pressure on Latin American drug networks, prompting Venezuelan President Maduro to mobilize 4.5 million militia members in response. The naval deployment marks a significant militarization of counter-narcotics efforts, with Venezuela denouncing the move as imperial aggression, while the US doubles bounties on Maduro to $50 million. Ukraine is stepping up attacks on Russian energy. The attacks on Russian oil refineries sent gasoline prices in Russia to record highs, despite the government banning petrol exports to cope. The refineries struck account for more than 44 million tons of products annually, or more than 10% of Russia's capacity. Deadly attacks in Colombia amid rising violence. At least 18 people were killed and dozens injured in 2 separate attacks in Colombia, marking an escalation in the country's ongoing security crisis. A car bomb in the western city of Cali killed 6 and wounded over 60, while a drone attack on a police helicopter outside Medellin killed 12 officers. Authorities blamed factions of the former FARC rebel group. The violence comes as Colombia prepares for elections next year and continues to navigate a fragile peace process. Here's the latest in economics. Indonesia and Peru sign landmark FTA in South-South trade shift. The free trade agreement represents a new model of global South cooperation, bypassing traditional Western trade patterns. The deal, signed amid rising US tariffs on both countries, creates a trans-Pacific corridor linking ASEAN's 650 million consumers with South America markets, featuring gradual tariff reductions on agricultural products, minerals, and manufactured goods. Kenya seeks China's approval to convert dollar loan to yuan. Nairobi specifically wants to reprofile the $5 billion loan that Beijing underwrote for the construction of the East African country's modern railway. If approved, the move would reduce pressure on Kenya's forex reserves. The country spends nearly $1 billion a year in debt service to China. Brazil's $5.5 billion credits for exporters hit by tariffs. Measures include postponing tax charges for companies affected by US tariffs and providing tax credits to companies until the end of 2026. It also includes expanding access to insurance against cancelled orders. India's economic boom in August fuels price rises. Private sector activity expanded at the fastest pace on record in August, fueled by a surge in demand led by the dominant services sector, which allowed firms to lift prices at the fastest rate in over 12 years. The latest results stand in contrast to expectations for a slowdown in economic growth in Asia's third-largest economy to average 6.4% this fiscal year, after an unexpectedly strong 7.4% expansion during the first 3 months of 2025. Billion in government grants to equity in the troubled chipmaker. The deal, which makes the US the third-largest shareholder in Intel, signals a shift in industrial policy as the administration seeks to revitalize domestic chip manufacturing. Intel has struggled to build out more capacity and capitalize on the development of mobile technology and AI, falling far behind rival Nvidia, whose market cap has passed $4 trillion, while Intel's is around $100 billion. Now for news in development. Tunisians rally in support of trade union amid government clampdown. The country's largest rally in months came as members and backers protested President Said's growing pressure on its main labor union, the Tunisian General Labor Union, UGTT. The UGTT was part of the 2015 Nobel Peace Prize-winning National Dialogue Quartet. More than 2,000 nuclear weapons detonated. As part of the Cold War-era nuclear arms race, the US, Soviet Union, Britain, France and China conducted more than 2,000 tests between 1945 and 1996. the human health impacts of the tests linger on in those countries, as well as other test sites in the Marshall Islands and India. Steel, copper, lithium imports targeted under Uyghur forced labor law. The Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act restricts the import of goods tied to what the US describes as China's human rights abuses and ongoing genocide via internment camps for Uyghurs and other religious and ethnic minority groups in the western Xinjiang region. Beijing has denied any abuses. Euro shippers cut US off as tariff deadline nears. Many European carriers and Australia's Postal Service, citing uncertainty about the new rules and a lack of time to create enforcement mechanisms, have opted to pause sending packages to the US. The new US tariff on low-value parcels is due to come into effect August 29. Uganda deal to take deported migrants. The deal with the US to take in deported migrants is on condition that the deportees don't have criminal records and aren't unaccompanied minors. Uganda also expressed a preference that those brought into the country should be nationals of African countries. Finally, our social news: 120-million-year-old bison-sized dinosaur with sail spine. A new species of sail-backed dinosaur has been discovered on the Isle of Wight, an island off the coast of England. Named Istiorachis macarthuri, the dinosaur was roughly the size of an American bison and weighed around 1 ton, roaming the land more than 120 million years ago. It has been theorized that the dinosaur's sail, stretching from its back to its tail, served as a form of visual communication and likely helped it find a partner. US reviewing all 55 million foreigners with visas. Any violations could lead to deportation. The move is part of a growing crackdown on foreigners who are legally permitted to be in the US. There were 12.8 million green card holders and 3.6 million people in the US on temporary visas last year. Italian glacier requires remote monitoring due to melting. The Ventina glacier has melted so much due to climate change that geologists can no longer measure it the way they have for the past 130 years. It has already lost 1.7 kilometers in length since the first measuring benchmarks were positioned at the front of the glacier in 1895. Graphene-based breath sensor identifies diabetes in minutes. The sensor focuses on acetone, a natural byproduct of fat metabolism. Everyone exhales acetone, but levels above 1.8 parts per million signal diabetes risk. The sensor offers a fast, inexpensive way to identify diabetes and prediabetes. Current testing often requires blood draws or lab visits. Engineered yeast provides pollen for honeybees. An international team of biologists has found an artificial way to give bees a crucial nutrient, increasingly difficult to find in nature, boosting their population. Gene editing technology was used to engineer pollen replacement to help support bee colonies, and in turn could boost global food supplies. That's your Future Trends update for this week. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time with more stories reshaping our world.